Alright, yo, what's up? My name is Patrouski, and today I wanted to make a video talking about everything that I possibly could involving PokeMMO investing during the Halloween event. There's a lot of topics I want to talk on, a lot of vanities to cover, investment styles, strategies, etc., etc. Hopefully you guys can excuse the sick voice. I'm going to try to answer some of the common questions that I've seen as well. If this video is either helpful, enjoyable, or maybe even mildly entertaining, maybe consider clicking the like button and subscribe button. It helps me out a ton. But without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into our first topic. I think firstly, I just want to go ahead and talk about sealed product. Now, sealed product is essentially one of the safest investments. And when I say sealed product, I'm referring to either the goodie bags or the pumpkin goodie bags. Now, goodie bags right now sit at around 6 to 8K. This is exactly the bottom line price they dropped to in the last Halloween event. And let's go ahead and look at Halloween. Let's type this in. Goodie bag 2021. Let's go ahead and check that out and see what those prices are at. So they've actually tanked a ton, which is pretty interesting. So 2021 goodie bags are currently at around 15K. So usually they hover at around 20 to 30K, which is a pretty big range, but they've tanked. So what happens usually is that people panic sell during events to be able to make more money and make more capital to be able to invest in the current event. So let's say that these were usually they hit around at least 25K. If you invested in them last year, even if you bought them last year for 6 to 8K, and now they're 15K a piece, you've made a ton of profit, right? Especially if you buy them in high quantity. The important things with goodie bags is that you can buy them super cheap and buy them in very, very large quantities. Let's go ahead and run a few numbers. Alright, I brought up my best friend, the Windows calculator, down here in the bottom right hand corner of the screen. So let's go ahead and let's say we invested in 1,000 of these goodie bags. Let's say we buy 1,000 for 6K a piece. It's going to put us at 6 million in terms of total investment. Now, what if we were to sell them for around 15K a piece? Let's play it super conservative, at the very, very bare minimum. Worst case scenario, you're making, what is that, 6 mil, 15 mil, it's 9 mil profit, right? So within 1 year, you're making, worst case scenario, 9 mil profit on a 6 mil investment. This happened in the last year. That is an unbelievably safe investment, an unbelievable return on such a safe investment. Now, what if we go back to 2020? How much are goodie bags now for that price? Oh, they're around 28K a piece. That's a big difference. Let's go ahead and say we bought these 2 years ago. Once again, 1,000 of them times 6K a piece. 1,000 times 6K. Let's take that. Once again, a 6 mil investment. We already know that. Let's do 28,000. We can even say 30, honestly. Let's do 30,000 times 1,000. So let's say you bought 2 years ago, you bought 1,000 goodie bag 2020s. You'd now be able to sell them for a 30 mil total profit and make, or not profit, but 30 mil total and make around what, 24 mil profit in the process. That's pretty insane for a 2-year investment. 24 mil. That's also only putting in 6 mil. If you have a lot more than that, let's say 60 mil, you're making a disgusting amount of profit. It really becomes insane at that point, right? So let's go ahead and do one more. What about 2019? How far do these investments, look at this. Look how fast they snowball. I think this is one of the most interesting things. And obviously they won't do this every year. They won't do this every year to this exact same process because people are catching on to this sort of strategy. A lot more people are doing this. But look, 2018 goodie bags are 300K a piece. Are you kidding me? That's insane, right? It's crazy. Let's see if there exists. Look at this. Goodie bags from 2016 are now up to 35 mil. It's really unfathomable how absolutely expensive these really got and how crazy out of hand these things can get so quickly. Unironically, one of the best ways to get rich is to invest into a ton of sealed product, quit for 5 years, come back, and then bang, you're a millionaire, probably maybe billionaire if you're, lucky enough. Now, I know I've talked about this topic to death, but I really can't get over how consistent and safe investing in sealed product is. So if you want a safe investment, go for sealed product. I do always say if you're not willing to hold a product for at least 2 years, just don't invest. I don't recommend players investing into sealed product, vanities, anything. Don't invest into anything if you're not willing to be patient enough to hold on to something for at least 2 years. Obviously, sometimes you do want to sell 6 months or a year down the road. Sometimes that does happen. The opportunity does arise, but don't expect it. Expect to be holding something for at least 2 years. All right, now that sealed product is out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about the stall helmet a little bit. So this is an interesting item, in my opinion. It's definitely my favorite item of the event, and it matters a ton. And we'll get into this once we talk about the actual ultra rares more in depth, but it matters a ton because the fact that there is a budget option to the ultra rare is a really big deal. The stall helmet is really cool in my opinion, and it's really cheap. It's pretty insane the fact that this is only 130k or so. It's 120k, so they're rising a little bit, but they have tanked a lot. It's also really important when you want to consider investing in an item and seeing how many pages. Look at this. So there are around like 19 pages of skull helmets. That's obviously just the listed ones, not just the ones that are, not counting the ones that are in people's inventory and stuff. So it is important to, I guess, think about that or consider that. So there is a large quantity of skull helmets out there, but I do think this item is probably too cheap. I think this is a really good one. If you want to make a riskier vanity investment, sealed product is always safe and consistent, but vanities can have higher returns at a quicker rate, but they're a lot riskier. You can also lose a lot of money. For example, Mage's Staff and Werewolf. Now, I've lost a lot of money on vanity investments over the past like year or so. I'm not gonna lie. Now, long term, those investments will bring me returns, and I will make money on them. But I think I'm gonna step away from vanity investing, especially from a hard, perspective, or buying a ton of them. Right? I really just want to get. My perspective and my plans going forward for most holiday events is going to be picking up the few vanities that I do truly want for myself and my own purposes, and then just investing in sealed products. Sealed products is just way too safe. It's way too good. I can't recommend it enough. But I think if you're going to invest in any sort of item for this event, I do think Skull Helmet's probably the best in my opinion. The ultra rares are also worth considering, and we'll talk about pretty much every vanity at some point. So let's move on. All right, next let's talk about the really cheap vanities. So things like the Hellcat costume and the Hellcat stuff, sitting right around 35k a piece. Let's look at the Superman outfit, which is like 20k a piece, I believe. I think it might be superhero actually outfit. Yep, something like this, so like 22k a piece. Let's also look at the, what's the next one? The there's a bone stuff as well, which is a little more expensive, but so these are interesting investments. These are fine. They're pretty safe investments, I'd say, but they're also not going to move that much, and they're not going to move that quickly. There's also the Iron Hero. That's an important one. It's a really cheap one, so like 17k, super cheap. So these can be really great investments when bought in really high quantity, especially when stocking up on one of them specifically. So a good example I have is that I actually stocked up on Kobans during the anniversary event, mostly just because I really like the item. I have like 80 Kobans, I think, or 78 Kobans or something. I really just like the item personally. I'm a huge fan of the item. Bought around 78 of them or so. I think I bought them all for around 19k a piece on average. They have gone up. So like the fact that I bought, we can read the calculator again. The fact that I bought 80 Kobans or so for 18k a piece. Now that they've just like doubled in price or whatever to like 36k, like it's a big deal, right? So let's go ahead and do, let's say 19k a piece. 19k a piece. I bought 18 to 20k a piece, but mostly 19k. I think it's a good average. So let's do 80 Kobans times 19k. If I could just type in my calculator correctly. So I invested around 1.5 million Kobans. Now how much are they worth now? If I waited a little bit and sold them all for around 36k a piece, let's take that times 80. I did 82. If I could just type in my calculator correctly, that would make videos a lot easier. Let's go ahead and do 36 times 80. So 2.8. So I made around what's the math on that? I'm terrible at math. It was like 1.3 mil profit or something, like 1.3 mil profit. That's a very, very quick return within like a couple of months. And I also could have sold these like a while ago for this price. So stuff like that, like you can make really good, quick investments on cheap vanities like that if you do high quantity. The issue being is that you're never really going to strike it rich on those vanities, and you're never really going to be able to, they're not going to progress as well as sealed product. They're also just riskier than sealed product. I really do. Once again, I think everything comes back to just sealed product being the best thing. Also with those items, you have to worry about making sure you buy them at their bottom out price, because even if you buy them like 5k, 10k, like more expensive, it's going to take so much longer to return that profit. You have to make sure you buy them at the absolute bottom tier price and then see them go up from there. Luckily for me with Kobans pretty much didn't grow. I think 16k was the lowest I saw them go, but they're pretty much not really. Like they were at maybe that for like a day. Kobans pretty much stuck around 16 to 20k. I think I just sniped some. So I bought most of my Kobans at bottom out price. So, but once again, they're just riskier than sealed products, but you can go for it if you want to take a risk. If you really think there is some greater reward potential if a way too cheap vanity goes super overlooked and you snipe a ton of them, like hundreds of them, you could potentially make some really insane profits pretty even quickly, but it's once again a lot riskier. All right, now let's talk about non-event related items. So this is things like rare candies and XP candies and what else? TMs and stuff. So there's not many TMs in this event, but rare candies is probably one of the most important ones to talk about. And rare candies has a really interesting history. And there might actually be a market change going on with rare candies. I actually want to bring up a comment because someone left a really good comment that spurred a really good in-depth answer from me. Let me go ahead and grab that really quick. Alright, so recently Raise8k responded to my Vanity video talking about and raising a really fair critique and a really fair concern of the economy. So he said, I'm not so sure that rare candies will go back up to 16k since XP candies are much more common now with alpha swarms. So what he's referring to is that in the video I mentioned that rare candies are around 8 to 9k. I think this was like in an opening or opening goodie badge or something. I mentioned that right now, rare candies are around 8 to 9k, and this happens during every single event, and they spike back up, not spike back up, but they usually gradually go up over time after the events are over, because obviously they're coming in through goodie bags in mass supply during the events. They drop in price, everyone's listing them and stuff like that, and then once they settle out and supply chills out and demand increases or stays the same, they usually rise back up to around 16 to, they used to be like 18 to 20k or so. So I talk about this. Let's go ahead and look at my reply. So my reply says, it's definitely possible that the higher supply of XP candies affect the rare candy price in the long term, but not by much. They were 14 to 16k before the event, before the Halloween event started, when XP candies were already hitting the market hard. So what I'm referring to there is that the Alpha Swarm update happened reasonably before the Halloween update. So XP candies were already flooding the market before the event started, so rare candies were already kind of adjusted and like adjusting to that price, and I go on to talk about their uses in game, which is super important for understanding the price difference here. They usually drop to this, so yeah, already hitting the market hard, and they usually drop to this exact price during events and then rebound. Prior to the anniversary event / the implementation of XP candies, which is when they were implemented, the anniversary event, rare candies would usually hover around the 18 to 19k range. So they have already arguably been lightly impacted economically by the XP candies being lowered to around 14, 16k, but it might also have to do with them not there being enough time allowed between events for the supply to cool down, since there was an extra event this last year, being the 10-year anniversary event happening in the middle of the year around June or July, which we're not used to that. Usually we have event season, which is October, December, January, and that's it. We don't usually have like that middle of the summer, like middle of the year event. So that was a big deal, introducing other things to the economy. That stimulated the shiny charm economy a ton, which made a big deal. You probably saw that if you paid attention to that. It's a really huge deal. It is super important. It's also, this is a really huge point. It's super important to note that XP candies and rare candies serve very different purposes while being similar items. If you don't know, XP candies are mostly used by rich shiny hunters looking for a specific type of shiny that needs to be evolved to be rebred, like Riolu / Lucario. This is a really good example. That's like the main use of them, at least by veteran players and such, or by new players looking for a little bit of help in the storylines, because XP candies are obviously going to be more beneficial at those lower levels on a Pokemon when it's cheaper to like level up a rare candy. Rare candies are nice because you can level at the higher levels and save a lot of time. Rare candies are generally used by main accounts to save some time on super slow leveling mons that need to be level 100. Example given, levels 97 to 100 on a Breloom. Breloom requires 1.6 million XP to get to level 100, which is insane compared to something like Charizard or a normal starter. Most normal Pokemon require around 1 million XP, 1 million. So imagine having to level a Charizard to 100.5 essentially, but it's more than that because of the XP curve. I know this is a lot to explain, a lot to cover, but I thought this question really sparked a really in-depth and interesting answer in my opinion. I don't know, I got really into answering this, and I thought it was a really interesting retrospective on the rare candy economy. And this is why I bring this up, because this is why, in my opinion, rare candies are still a solid investment. Even though XP candies might impact it lightly, I do still think that rare candies are going to be super solid, and they're not going to be like pushed down by any means. I think buying them for 8 to 9k, they'll definitely get at least up to 15k. I think back to like 16 to 18 within a few months. Maybe give it like 4 to 6 months, or at least give it until after the event season is over. So maybe next year around March or April, I would look to see rare candies at around at least 15 to 16k. All right, now I know that was a super long time to talk about rare candies, but I thought it was super important, so hopefully it was at least entertaining a little bit. Now let's go ahead and move on to the heftier stuff, the meatier stuff, the ultra rares of the event. Now, if you aren't aware, there are 2 ultra rares for this event: the Shadow Skull Helmet, which is very much akin to a Alolan Marowak, and then the Shadow Bone Club. Now, in my opinion, and as you can see economically it reflects, the Shadow Bone Club is going to be a more interesting item for a couple of reasons. But before that, let's go ahead and talk about this. I think that going on in the future, it'll be these ultra rares from this event will be hugely impacted by the fact that there is a budget option. The fact that the Skull Helmet and the normal Bone Club look like these items but in different colors, but the Bone Club does lack the flame coming from the Shadow Bone Club, which is a big deal. Not to play, play like having that animation and that little flame flicker is a big deal, honestly. But the fact that there is a budget item is huge, right? You can't do that for a lot of other items. Let's say you want like an eyeball mask, for example. Eyeball masks are really cool vanities, in my opinion, that honestly might see a surge in price in the upcoming years. They're just still pretty new, released in 2020. But like, if you wanted a budget version of an eyeball mask, there's nothing you can really do about it. Like, there's no budget option to get this kind of look, right? Like, you can maybe argue Oni mask, but like not really. They're pretty different items, right? But like, you can say that for the Shadow Skull stuff, where like you can just look up Skull Helmet. Let's say you don't want to pay, you know, the 5 mil or whatever for the Shadow Bone Club, or for the, you don't want to pay the 1.5 mil for the Alolan one. I personally just straight up prefer the Skull Helmet, so that's a huge thing as well. Like, a lot of players might share that same sentiment. It's really interesting how you can just pick up this budget option. That impacts the price a lot. When you're able to get a lesser cool version to some extent to some people for a lot cheaper, that's a big deal. When certain items are the only item that look that way, and that is the only way to get that look and the only way to match your outfit, that is huge, especially with vanities and cosmetics. Alright, another huge part of investing in PokeMMO, especially in vanities, that I feel like people don't talk about enough, is that it is really tough to gauge the overall community's interest for a couple of reasons. I can only talk about my anecdotal experience, you know, what my team thinks of the events, what everyone I interact with a lot of people that play PokeMMO, right? All my commenters, all my Discord members, everyone I interact with in game. I talk to a lot of people, and I'm very, you know, involved in the community, and even then I don't feel comfortable drawing larger conclusions to some extent for everyone due to a couple factors. One of which is the lack of polling and lack of just like communication via that. We really can only use the market and the data and just see the data and the numbers to see like, oh, like how interested are people in this item via how much it's being bought and stuff like that. But another huge thing that people don't talk about is the language barrier and the different cultures in PokeMMO. The English speaking community in PokeMMO is really small in comparison to the Chinese speaking community or the Spanish speaking or stuff like that, right? Or Portuguese or Brazilian community. They're huge, right? Like, those communities for PokeMMO are huge, which is awesome. But when you can't gauge what items that player base is interested in, it's really tough to understand what to invest into. And I think that's something that is super, super under-talked about. A huge thing that played a factor in that is the Golden Dragon Mask, which is one of the highest rising, you know, vanities of all time. And a huge reason why this vanity rose so quickly was because the Chinese community absolutely loved it. And that was something that in the, you know, American community, in the English speaking community, we had no fucking idea. We had no idea this item was going to boon, I think, as much as it did. And it was really, really interesting to see that take place. I think that was like a perfect example of just the cultural difference and the cultural impact of PokeMMO, where different communities are going to value different vanities for different reasons. And it's really tough to make a judgment call when you just don't understand that, when you just like don't, you know, interact with that enough. Like, I'm an American who only knows one language, right? So like, it's tough for me to understand and communicate with those people and like understand their interests and differences, and it's tough. It limits you, which sucks, right? It limits you, and I think that's really interesting, and I think it's important to acknowledge that ignorance, I guess, or acknowledge the lack of that knowledge. Now, the lack of the knowledge. Now, if you can speak different languages and you interact with those communities, that's awesome. You have an economic advantage. So go out there, learn some languages, and get involved in all different communities. Now, the last positive point I want to talk about is actually about the Shadow Skull Bone specifically. I do want to go ahead and look at that. We can also look at the amount of things that have been listed, or the amounts of them that exist. So Shadow Bone, yeah, Shadow Bone Club. What's interesting about the Shadow Bone Club, or what's important to note, I guess, is that there's a lot of these listed, actually. I'm kind of surprised. It is in the glove slot. Now, glove slot items, there's not that many of them compared to the other slots. That's a really important thing. Let's go ahead and actually sort just by glove slot vanities, right? And see what we see. We see Bone Club. Let's not sort by price. Let's sort by start date. So what's like the newest? We just see a lot of Bone Clubs. Like recently, so there's the Torch, there's the Bone Clubs, there's the Lollipop. That's also from a recent event. And then other than that, you know, how many? There's gloves. Gloves look like shit. They're not a cool vanity, right? Like, just gloves. Like, there's not that many. It's like Bone Club, Lollipop, Shadow Bone Club, gloves, Lollipop, Torch. And then what, right? Like, there's not that many glove slot vanities in the game yet. They're still introducing those for the most part. So I think, yeah, that's it. That's all the glove slot vanities listed. That's crazy, right? So like, I think that's a huge thing. When a vanity is a strong vanity in a category that doesn't really have many other options, that's a big deal. If Shadow Bone Club is the best glove slot vanity in the entire game, that's a huge deal. It's most people's only option, right? So that is a huge thing to consider that I don't think is also considered enough. All right, lastly, I was pretty surprised to see how many Shadow Bone Clubs were actually on the GTL. Let's go ahead and check for Shadow Skull helmets. How many pages? Yeah, that's what I thought. So there's only around 5 pages of Shadow Skull helmets listed, but there was a surprising amount of Bone Clubs. That's actually really interesting. And it's obviously tough to draw a direct correlation and see what that tells us. There's 8 of these versus 5 of those. Like, I don't know if that means one is more common. You know, it's not that huge of a difference either. So draw whatever conclusions you want with that. That's kind of a tough one, but it's at least interesting. I definitely thought it was worth noting. But hopefully some of the information in this video was helpful. I'm surprised. I think we went pretty in depth in this video. I think I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed rambling to some extent and just talking about, I guess, the depths of Pokemon that I understand. I've been playing this game for a very long time, so I do see a lot of things that I've seen before, and, you know, I see history repeat itself economically and everything, and it's interesting. It's fun. Now, I am not educated in any sort of economic sense. I am not, you know, I'm not the best person to take financial advice from. These are just my thoughts, my opinions. So please, if you lose money because of me or because of these thoughts and opinions, don't blame me. If you make money, don't blame me. You know, either way, it's on you. It's honestly a coin flip at the end of the day most of the time. But I appreciate you guys watching. Hopefully this video was helpful, entertaining, interesting, or something of the sorts. Hopefully it added some positive value to your life, right? So if it did, consider liking the video, subscribe for daily PokeMMO content. Check out the Discord link down below to join a really cool community that loves this game just as much as you do, hopefully. You can also go above and beyond and support the channel financially if you want to, if you think it's warranted, by clicking the PayPal and Venmo links down below. Those help out a ton. They allow me to keep making PokeMMO content every day, quite literally. So thank you all so much who go above and beyond and support that. But that's it for me today. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments down below. If you disagree with anything I said in this video today, disagree with me politely down in the comments below. If you agree with me, cool. I appreciate you guys' time. Have a great day. Have a good one. Peace. Good luck on your investments. Hey, thanks for watching till the end of the video. I really appreciate it. And if your name is on here, I appreciate you even a little more. Thank you so much to everyone who goes above and beyond and supports the channel financially. It allows me to do what I do and just focus on making the best PokeMMO content possible. So thank you so much. Have a great day. I'll see you later. Peace.